By the time you're watching this video, Halo 4 should be coming out in a few hours. But I noticed that no one's really done any background on what you need to know before Halo 4, so that's what this video will be about. Let's go. In the beginning, there were the Precursors, who created the Forerunners and humans to rule the galaxy. The Precursors soon decided the Forerunners weren't worthy to inherit the mantle, and tried to annihilate them, but the Forerunners won the war, and the Precursors were wiped out. As a last resort, the Flood was created as a test for Forerunners and humanity to decide who would inherit the mantle and, the role of protecting all life. Hundreds of thousands of years later, humans make first contact with the Flood, and after a couple hundred years, a war erupts as the plague-like flood spreads and humanity is forced to expand their colonies away from their infected worlds, and right into Forerunner territory. Soon humanity's fighting a two-sided war, and, well, you've all played the games. Imagine fighting the Flood and these, extremely evolved beings that can crush you in an instant. Humanity ends up being de-evolved by the Didact, the mightiest Forerunner general, and left on a small world called Erd Tareen, which is called Earth. Forerunners had realized that if the Flood ever returned, they would need the secret of how the humans had defeated the Flood before, so they kept them alive. In the meantime, the Forerunners knew they would need something to combat the Flood should it ever return. Forerunner Council commissioned the Master Builder to create 12 Halo rings, each with the power to wipe out all potential Flood hosts, should the parasite ever return. The Didact, opposing this plan, went into exile after trying to get the Shield worlds to be built, and he was voted out. He went into exile and placed himself in a cryptum, which is a permanent state of meditation. He would rather live out his days alone than deal with the shame of being cast out. The Librarian, the Didact's wife, and the Life Shaper charged with cataloging and preserving every species in case of a Flood outbreak, placed her husband's cryptum on Erd Tareen, where 1,000 years later it was uncovered and opened by a young Forerunner named Born Stellar Makes Eternal Lasting. Not the best name, but he doesn't keep it for very long. The Didact, upon awakening, realized something had gone wrong and recruited Born Stellar and 2 humans to find out how much had changed during his absence. For time's sake, the Didact discovers that the 12 rings had been completed and that the Flood had returned 300 years prior to his resurrection. He also learned that in their attempts to find alternative solutions to the Flood, the Contender-class AI, Mendicant Bias, had been created to control the 12 Halos and can control up to 5 at one time. The Master Builder tasked Mendicant Bias with interrogating a captive found in Precursor ruins that claimed to be the last living Precursor. The prisoner, however, was a Gravemind, comprised of hundreds of minds. Mendicant Bias interrogated the Gravemind for 42 years straight, and in that time the Gravemind corrupted Mendicant Bias, turning him against his creators and causing him to attack the Forerunner Council with 5 of the Halos, while the other 7 traveled to the Ark to safety. You can find out more about Mendicant Bias in Halo 3. He ends up helping you as a last redemption before he goes rampant and, well, not rampant, before he dies when you light the last Halo ring and destroy the Ark. Back to the story. Soon the Forerunners and the Flood are at war, and before long the only thing left to do is to fire the 7 rings that are still remaining, which is done by the Didact, the one who opposed the ring's creation in the first place. And it's actually not even the same Didact. The Didact left his imprint on Born Stellar and was then killed, so Born Stellar kind of becomes him. Hundreds of thousands of years later, the galaxy has been repopulated with the species that had been preserved on the Ark. We all know about that. And humanity is once again in a desperate war against an alien force, the Covenant. I'll leave that one for you to play through the games, but, short story, the Didact went in, the new Didact went into another cryptum after lighting the rings and went on to his own Shield world because they were created. And he is now on Requiem. And, well, by now, if you haven't figured out that Requiem is the stage for Halo 4 and possibly 5 and 6, I think this video is the last of your problems.
Where are we?
And so you come at last.
Cortana, what is it?
are Forerunners, guardians of all that exists. Humanity stands as the greatest threat in the galaxy. The Forerunners.